I'm joined by Michael Shear, two-time Pulitzer Prize winner from the New York Times, White House correspondent for the New York Times. Good morning, Michael. Aren't you glad you're not on the hurricane beat?
Oh man, I was down in Florida during Andrew 20 some years ago. I'm happy not to be there again. That's for sure.
I began the show by telling people my brother-in-law had a house in Homestead when Andrew hit, and all that was left was a toilet and a wall. It was amazing, the most brutal thing I've seen.
Yeah.
So good luck to these people. Michael, I want to talk to you about your article yesterday, updated last night. Biden is hoping small changes go a long way on immigration. Look, the size of the problem is immense. Would you explain to people the small ball that Joe Biden is proposing? I'm going to quarrel with you a little bit, but always aware that Michael's one of the good guys. He tries to get it right, but I got to quarrel with him. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay. So quarrel away when after this. I mean, I think look, the immigration system has been having problems for decades. Presidents in both parties have struggled to deal with it. It's multifaceted. There are problems on the other side of the border in terms of what is driving people to leave their homes and try to come to this country. That involves global migration patterns. It involves the economic and political fortunes of people far from here. And then when people do come, there have been problems for decades in what we do with them and how we deal with the number of people that come over. And one of those problems, not doesn't solve the whole thing, but one of those problems has been how fast can you deal with the asylum process? Somebody comes over and says, hey, I claim asylum. I want to live in the United States because I'm being persecuted in my own country. That decision and other immigration decisions have taken so long over the years that, that when a person claims asylum, it can take 4, 5, 7 years before that case is finished. And in the meantime, where do you put the people? Do you let them go? If you let them go while they're kind of awaiting the outcome of their case, what happens to them? Do they get to work? If they don't get to work, do they become, sort of more of a problem in our society? All of those questions have been problems. And what Biden has done is try to speed that asylum decision making up. It won't solve everything, but they're, I think, hoping that over the long run, that could at least solve a part of the problem.
Fairly stated. I want people to understand the number of asylum seekers run anywhere from 25 to 50% of the number of migrants who cross the southern border. So if we have 2.2 million in this fiscal year, which I think is a fair number. Do you agree with me, Michael? About 2.2 million expected this year, fiscal year end of this month?
Yeah, some of those people are some of that 2.2 million are people who are probably the same person who's tried to, come back and forth a couple of times. So it's not an exact number of people, but it's about that.
Yeah, it's a record. Now, I have a small quarrel and a large quarrel. My small quarrel is, and this is, by the way, it falls in the category whenever I write a column for the Washington Post, the comments fill up with people, why didn't you write about this? Why didn't you write about that? I'm not trying to do that to you because it's not, I think that's an illegitimate request. Why didn't you write about this? But you said, thus far, the changes are tiny. Quote, only 99 people since the end of May have completed what are called asylum merits interviews with the asylum officer and fully evaluated under new rules. Of those, 24 have been granted asylum, while most of the rest have had their cases sent back to the immigration court system for an appeal. Nothing on how long an appeal takes or whether or not they've done anything, because the first adjudication is never the last adjudication in this system. I worked with this system fairly closely for many years in Southern California on behalf of people. I was on the Orange County Children and Families Commission for 17 years. I know all about people coming to the country without permission. If they don't fix the appeals, they haven't fixed anything, Michael. Have they done anything on the appeals process?
So part of the reason that I didn't go into a lot of detail there is because they don't have many numbers yet. They just started this at the end of May. So what happened to the 50, 60 some odd people? They say that those people, if they were denied asylum by the asylum officer in this interview, they say they'll go back into the backlog system, but they claim it will be months, not years, because essentially they'll go to the front of the line and that the court system will be expedited because they will have already had this sort of interview taken place by the asylum officer. I share your skepticism. I mean, if they ramp this up and instead of 99 people, it's 9,900 people or more going through the system, this could become just as clogged as the last one. I mean, I do, and I think a lot of people share that skepticism.
So my minor quarrel is, okay, the appeals is not elucidated, but also you ought to, or your editor ought to have moved up the context. The backlog in the immigration court system is accrued with 1.9 million pending cases, up from 150,000 in 2001. Of those, about 750,000 are asylum cases. So you're telling me that they handled 99 in June, July, August, and most of September, and there are 750,000 more. It's not a story. So that's quarrel number one. Quarrel number two, the bigger one. This is my major quarrel. There's a paragraph in your story. In some communities where jobs are going unfilled, people have welcomed the influx of migrants looking for work. Which communities, Michael Shear?
Well, I'll give you an example. I did a bunch of stories when the Afghan refugees came, when the President Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, pulled out of Kabul. I traveled to Fremont, California, which has a little community called Little Afghan, where lots of Afghan folks have resided for years. That's one place where everyone I talked to said, "My God, we need these people because we can't hire." Restaurants are closing because they can't get enough, workers to staff them. Fargo, North Dakota is another place where I almost went. I didn't have a chance to actually go, but talk to people in Fargo. This was, last summer, so a year ago. But the labor market is incredibly tight. That doesn't mean that, that it is the same everywhere across the country. But if you look at where the unemployment rate is and where help wanted ads are, I think it is fair to say that even in some Republican communities, even places with Republican mayors, they are, they're desperate for workers.
Michael, I gotta disagree with you. I don't think it's fair to say in some communities where jobs are going unfilled, people have welcomed the influx of migrants looking for work in the context of a story about the southern border. Afghan asylum seekers aside, because they've been welcome in many communities, and I know that to be a fact, you're correct. I don't think you could find one mayor, one city council, one police department to say, yes, we want the southern migrants to come here. Now, they go somewhere. I know exactly where they go. They go to Santa Ana, has the highest population per capita of Mexican migrants of anywhere in the United States who have come in from Mexico without papers. We take care of them. Orange County does a very good job. Nobody wants more, Michael. That's just, that sentence suggests, as did one of the Sunday news show, that this is good for America. I don't think it is. I think unregulated migration is a disaster for these people and for America.
Well, look, I think you rightly indicate that there is a big debate, and I didn't mean with that sentence to suggest that it's a non-controversial thing and everybody is welcoming these migrants with open arms. That is for sure not the case. I will say, though, that I don't know that your opinion is shared entirely by everyone across the country. I think there are lots of places out there where if these people arrive in a coordinated fashion, if they're not simply, sort of dumped on communities with no ability to sort of take care of them, that there are communities that are not only kind of welcoming of them, but understand that they're part of the U.S. economy and that they do play a role. I mean, that's generalizing. And
Michael, if that's true, I would have welcomed the facts to support it. Now, John Cornyn's coming on later. He's already retweeted your article. And I said, well, you'll have a chance to comment on him. I'm going to go to that sentence and say, if you're going to make that assertion, you have to. Your editor ought to have obliged you to name some communities. Am I right about that? I mean, you said some communities. Don't we need a fact?
That's fair. It was a long piece, and
Oh, it's an interesting piece. Yeah.
Thank you. A couple of examples would have been good, and I take the criticism.
All right, well, see, that's why I like talking to Michael Shear. You can bust my chops the next time you're on, Michael, about something that I say. Something about, for example, the Cleveland Browns going perfect season. Michael Shear, thank you. Follow him on Twitter, Shear M.